Hello, welcome to the New Stack Makers, a podcast where we talk about at-scale application development, deployment, and management. Hey, we'd like to thank Cloud Foundry for sponsoring our podcast from the Cloud Foundry Summit in Santa Clara, California. It's been a great conference. We've learned a lot about the new open service broker API developments, Kubo, and just generally how enterprise customers are using Cloud Foundry these days. Check out Cloud Foundry at cloudfoundry.org and check out the podcast. We have several coming up. Hey, it's Alex Williams, the New Stack, here today at the Cloud Foundry Summit with Lauren Cooney, who is now Director of Solutions Marketing at Equinix.
I am.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm great. Yeah, real well. I mean, you know, I knew you back in your Cisco days, and now you're at Equinix. What are you doing exactly? What is your job?
You were picking up scoops when I was at Microsoft as well.
That's right. That's right.
Great. So what I'm doing at Equinix right now is I'm focusing on something called interconnection. So Equinix is a company that historically was really peer-to-peer networking.
Okay.
Where data centers would kind of be the place where all the traffic would come.
Right.
And they would exchange it. They would, exchange capacity and things along those lines. Now what Equinix is really focused on is the digital edge and interconnection-oriented architecture.
Right.
So interconnection-oriented architecture is something similar to SOA. But basically what it allows users to do is create a direct connection, private connection, to the public cloud, to multiple public clouds inside of our data centers that are across 44 different areas in 21 cities.
Kind of changes perceptions about infrastructure? Is that kind of one of the hopes?
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
It's looking at really a multi-hybrid cloud strategy.
Okay. So when you're thinking about those interconnections then, those interconnections can be within the data center and outside of the data center.
They're inside of the data center.
Okay,
so
inside
the
entirely.
way to think about it is a direct or virtual connection. Literally, you're like a company A specifically wants to connect to Azure, or they want to connect to Google Cloud, or they want to connect to AWS. There is literally a direct connection that goes into the data that is inside of the data center that goes to that service, and the company can then use that service for their IT department.
Okay.
If that might be the use case.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so tell us the business reasons why interconnect is becoming more important for customers. What's happening?
There's this thing called digital disruption going on. I don't know if you've heard of it.
Dungeons, Dragons, digital disruption. Yeah.
Is that a buzzword?
Digital disruption?
Yeah, and what we're looking at is digital disruption, of course, but also looking at the digital edge, and that's where people and locations and data and technology all come together. And as things go further out towards the edge, right, into different geographies, what companies are looking to do is to push their technologies and their solutions closer to where people are,
right,
and the data is,
right,
so that they can have real-time business analysis of what's going on at that edge. So companies are looking to expand into new businesses, as new branch offices are opening, factories are opening, things are moving pretty quickly nowadays. A way to, grow your business is actually to do it through, the digital edge and interconnection-oriented architecture.
We're hearing a lot more about edge computing, and we're hearing it in the context of, the need for compute. I think where you said it well, at where people are, right? Mm-hmm. So that can provide in the compute, networking, and storage capabilities that are at the edge. But there's lots to do kind of to bring those networks out, right? And to bring that storage out there. And really, it's really kind of the idea of like this software actually going out to those applications itself, or the network going out to the applications itself, instead of the application coming back to the network, isn't it?
Exactly. And what we look at it as is when you're looking at interconnection, you have to look at it from the perspective of, let's take MPLS. MPLS is pretty expensive, right, as a transport technology. So if you actually take a look at companies and what they're doing, they're looking to co-locate their information closer to where their hubs are. And we can actually take away the need for them to run MPLS networks between their hubs, and they'll run it inside of our data centers, and it saves massive cost savings.
Okay. Okay. So, what's the developer story in all this? What is what's the role of we're here at Cloud Foundry Summit, and there's lots of companies who are adopting Cloud Foundry, and they're hiring thousands of developers, right? And what's the relationship between this interconnect philosophy and developer platforms like Cloud Foundry? What is the connect? What's the thread there?
Well, I think let's take the example of Azure just announced that Microsoft just announced that they were doing Cloud Foundry, and Cloud Foundry has had amazing traction on Azure, basically. We directly connect to Azure inside of our data centers, so we provide that direct, secure, private connection to a public cloud that then Cloud Foundry can run on. So we are providing that direct, private, secure connection versus over the open internet that provides developers a secure environment to build applications in.
So this is almost like peer-to-peer cloud computing in a way.
You could look at it that way, yes.
P2PC?
A little bit, yeah. You want to coin that one? Well, I think it's great. What we're looking at is loosely coupled architectures, distributed architectures, really. So what we're saying is, okay, with interconnection, you flip the topology, right? Or you flip the architecture, right? And then you take a look at your topology and you say, okay, where are people? Where are my locations? Where are my businesses that I'm looking to expand to, that I already have, where I'm looking to grow my business, et cetera. And then you basically look at, okay, what are the cloud services that I want to connect to in those different areas? And we offer most of the cloud services in multiple different geographies.
So there's all these cloud computing platforms, right? And a lot of these data centers are just gigantic, right?
Our data centers are pretty gigantic, yes.
But you can't build gigantic data centers all over the edge.
Well, we just acquired some of Verizon's assets. So we have some Verizon data centers, but we're also really looking to grow. We're global, right? And we also have multiple different partnerships. And where I think it's important to look at is, the Microsofts and the Googles of the world, as they're growing, are growing with us because they're our partners. We don't compete with them. They actually are established inside of our data centers for customers to directly connect to.
So we see, almost an infinite array of mobile devices.
Mobile explosion.
And we could probably look around here right now and probably count at least
6 people on their mobile devices right now.
Right. And the hardware architectures are evolving.
Yes.
We're seeing more interest in ARM in the ARM ecosystem. How is that going to impact Equinix and how you work with your customers as you tell that story about the edge?
Well, the reason why we are really about the architecture, and we're working heavily with lots of different architects, and we have more coming out actually for architects this fall, which I'd love to talk to you about when the time comes, and including modeling tools and things like that to address these needs. But I think the thing is that Equinix is all about neutrality. So at the end of the day, what does the customer have running? Do they want to keep running it? Do they want something new? What do they want inside of their data center footprint that are inside of our data centers? Right? And how can we help them get there? And how can we help them architect to save money? I mean, these customers come to us and they're running 50 SaaS applications, and they don't even know sometimes that they're running that many applications. And we're able to bring them, information. One of the things that we do is bring them information on the multiple applications that they're running and help them look at where are the best locations for their data center footprint to be, how are the best ways to connect, and how do they actually reduce latency and cost with those connections.
So you see more interest in ARM?
I am. I'm hearing a lot about ARM.
You're hearing a lot.
I'm hearing a lot.
It's not. It's still a lot of discussion.
There's still a lot of discussion happening, yeah.
And so x86 obviously is dominant, and it'll stay dominant for a while. But won't ARM become increasingly important when we start thinking about edge computing overall?
I think it will. Yes.
Yeah.
Especially when you're thinking about connecting to all the devices and things along those lines that we were talking about earlier. I mean, Like everything is mobile now, right? So effectively, what is the best way to connect to that? And where are the best way to connect to your population centers and your users?
So companies who are thinking about multi-cloud have to think about this interconnect strategy.
They have to think about security.
Yeah.
They have to think about costs. They've got to think about things like WAN optimization, right? It's
Right.
really a network optimization
Right.
architecture
Right.
that we're looking at here. And
Right.
regardless of who you're working with from a vendor perspective, we can connect you to an ecosystem of providers, suppliers, et cetera, inside of our data centers. So you can connect to, digital companies that are doing that. Think of it as an ecosystem of basically providers that you can directly connect to as an enterprise. Like, ServiceNow is in some of our data centers, IBM SoftLayer. There's definitely lots of other partners that we're looking at connecting to as well.
Is there almost now a category emerging, almost like cloud computing hardware, where do you see any proof that we're starting to see more software being built specifically for this new kind of hardware that we're seeing built for scale inside cloud service providers?
It's interesting. I see there's a lot of, we can talk about open compute, right?
Right.
I mean, open compute is definitely something that is out there and becoming more and more popular. And Equinix is a member of the Open Compute Foundation as well. We are looking at more open source opportunities to, engage with and seeing what makes sense for our company and our users and our, the architects that we work with and the enterprise organizations that we talk to are increasingly using open source. I think that what we're seeing is that, whereas proprietary hardware and software, are still the norm and are still heavily used, we're also seeing an influx in open source, and we're seeing a mix there as well.
So, okay, that's interesting. So this interconnected strategy will have to kind of still be able to use the same platform across multiple cloud services.
That is the beauty of it. So Platform Equinix, you can use multiple cloud services together. An enterprise organization can basically use AWS, Azure, Salesforce, ServiceNow, et cetera, in their IT department, based out of our data centers. And they can be running multiple clouds, private clouds because they've got the direct connection to the public services.
Isn't this the next generation of open source in many ways, where we're going to have to come down to the hardware itself to think through, what should be open source actually at the hardware level?
I think you have to look at, and one of the things that when we're talking to customers, we say this all the time, you have to look at the architecture, right? This is why it's the interconnection-oriented architecture, or IOA for short, right? And because it is changing so rapidly, right? We really, with edge computing and digital disruption, as much as we hate that word, it is a word that we have to use at times. So how do we bring, the data and the businesses closer to their users?
Right. So is Cloud Foundry still, you guys were talking a lot about Cloud Foundry when it first, became a foundation in 2014 or so. And, and since then, we've seen a lot of, quite an evolution in platforms. Cloud Foundry itself has evolved quite a bit.
Yeah, Cloud
right?
Foundry.
Is it still a focal favorite for Equinix?
I would say that we're a fan of whatever our customers are a fan of. We are neutral in terms of vendors for the most part, but from the perspective of looking at Cloud Foundry as an organization, that it's really grown up. And you look at the number of customers that are not only using Cloud Foundry, but deploying Cloud Foundry. When you're looking at open source, I don't necessarily look at how many people are using a technology or a platform. I look at how many people are deploying on that platform, right? And we need to fundamentally in open source, to have open source be successful, see more deployments across the board.
Interesting. Well, Lauren, this has been a fun conversation as usual.
Definitely.
Great to see you.
Great to see you as well.
Great to see you in this new role at Equinix.
Brand new.
I was following your vacation your time of fun and leisure for a while there. You look like you were enjoying it.
I did have some fun, yes, I did. People are happy that I'm back to work, so they get boring posts of my dogs and flowers and normal things now.
Well, good. Well, thanks again.
Thank you so much.
And look forward to keeping in touch some more.
Definitely.
Okay.
Thanks.
And our thanks to Cloud Foundry for sponsoring our podcast from the Cloud Foundry Summit in Santa Clara, California. Check out Cloud Foundry at cloudfoundry.org and talk to you again soon. Listen to more episodes of the New Stack Makers at thenewstack.io/podcasts. Please rate and review us on iTunes, like us on YouTube, and follow us on SoundCloud. Thanks for listening, and see you next time.